I've been teaching as a professor now for the last 12 years or so, and over that time, I've gotten the opportunity to travel around the country and speak at different Bible conferences and parish missions. And I can't tell you how many times I have had parents come up to me and say, I sent my son or daughter off to college, or even off to high school, a Christian, and they came back an atheist or an agnostic. And sometimes they'll tell me that one of the things that played a role in that was the things they were learning in their classes, in their religion courses about the Bible. Things such as the Gospels were really anonymous. We don't really know who wrote them. Or the Gospels were written too late to be reliable. We can't really know what Jesus did and said. They weren't by eyewitnesses. And they're more like folklore or fiction, or like a game of telephone, like a children's game of telephone, than they are like ancient Greco-Roman biographies, accounts of what Jesus did and said. And so these parents will often ask me, do you have a book that I could recommend for my son or my daughter who's fallen away from the faith or who's struggling with faith in Jesus? And for years I had to say to them, I don't really have a good historical book that would start from square one and work through the evidence for who Jesus was, who he claimed to be, and how we know it. You know, a book that wouldn't just presuppose that the Gospels are reliable accounts, but actually would explain why we can consider them reliable accounts, not just from the perspective of faith, but from the perspective of history. So I finally sat down and decided to write that book. And that book is called The Case for Jesus, the Biblical and Historical Evidence for Christ. Now, in this Bible study series that we're doing, I'm going to actually walk you through in a lecture format, chapter by chapter, all of the major points in the book. So we're going to cover things such as, were the Gospels really anonymous? What evidence do we have that they were written by the apostles? What did the ancient Christians believe about who wrote the Gospels in the New Testament? And what did they believe about the lost Gospels, like the Gospel of Judas or Thomas? When were the four Gospels written? Were they too late to be reliable? Were they after the apostles had died? Or were they written during the lifetime of eyewitnesses to Jesus? And then finally, what kind of books are the Gospels? Are they biographies? And if so, how would an ancient reader have read them? As factual accounts of what Jesus did and said, or as more like folklore and fiction? We're going to look at all these questions on the origins of the Gospels, and then we're also going to shift and look at who Jesus claimed to be. Did he fulfill the prophecies of the Jewish Messiah? What did he mean by the kingdom of God and the Son of Man? Did he ever claim to be God? This is a really important one, because lots of people out there these days will say, Jesus only claims to be divine in the Gospel of John. He never claims to be divine in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the earlier Gospels. So that the score is, in a sense, three Gospels in which Jesus is merely a human Messiah against one Gospel in which he is a divine Messiah. Is that true? Is Jesus only divine in the Gospel of John? Or is he divine in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? In this book, I'm going to show you how Jesus does claim to be divine in all four Gospels, but he does it in a very Jewish way, using parables and riddles to conceal his identity from his opponents and reveal it to his disciples and to those who have the ears to hear. Finally, the book will wrap up with why was Jesus crucified if he was divine? Why did he say, my God, why have you forsaken me, when he himself is God? And then finally, what is the evidence that he was actually raised from the dead? I mean, why did ancient Jewish Christians, believe that Jesus actually came back to life bodily, that the tomb was empty? What were their motives for believing in the resurrection of the dead? So in this series on the case for Jesus, we're going to take everything that's in the book, but we're going to go deeper. We're going to take more time to explain and answer the questions raised by who was Jesus and how do we know it, right? The identity of Christ and the origin and reliability of the Gospels. So if you've ever wondered about these questions, if you've ever struggled with your faith in Jesus, well, why should I believe in Jesus? Is there a good reason for being a Christian? Or is Christianity just one more man-made religion? Then I invite you to come with me on this journey into the biblical and historical evidence for Christ.